Folks, it's good to be here amidst you. And when we sit down, we see some wonderful innovation happening. And you listen to Ganesh's story, you understand the enthusiasm with which he starts a company almost every other day. Now, what is this strange kind of phenomena we're seeing all around the world? Companies coming up, growing very fast, creating value, raising huge amounts of capital, dying quickly, some of them, and creating excitement. It was about 200 years ago that we had something called the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution was very significant because for the first time in human history, you use motive power to manufacture or do things much beyond muscular power of an individual. Till the discovery of the steam engine, people use human power or animal power to do things. The great pyramids, the great temples were all built with human power. And suddenly here was somebody who used fuel to heat water, to raise steam, to drive a locomotive or an engine, and that had a tremendous impact. And that changed the world. This single invention changed the world. And what did it mean? It meant that in a single place, you could have this motive power, get labor from all over, get raw material from all over, manufacture, set up an assembly plant, an assembly line, and deliver to all parts of the world. And Great Britain did that to build a worldwide empire. So they took raw material from India, they had labor from the rural areas in Great Britain. Then there was this motive power. They had capital that they got by raiding India and robbing India. And then they had India for a market. So India, which was the greatest country in terms of goods and services, because they were all done by artisans, found itself helpless because you had centralized production, and centralized production means standardization. It meant cheaper goods, and it meant that more and more money could be accumulated by capitalists or owners, exploiting labor, raw material, and a market. It also created a supply chain. For all these goods to come together to one place, you needed a supply chain. Supply chain for raw material, supply chain for people, supply chain for finished products. I want to tell you this because we need to understand what is happening. Then I'll speak about, what happens after you start a business. And this supply chain spread all in the world. It is after the World War II, 1945, that slowly globalization started in a very different way. And in the 1780s, with the rise of the East Asian tigers, and now in China in the 80s and 90s, you suddenly had a globally competitive supply chain and manufacturing created. So manufacturing was in China. Goods and labor came from rural areas of China, especially women, huge number of women. It's unlimited, inexhaustible supply of labor, which has been exhausted right now, and they're in trouble. And raw material came from all over Asia. So China became the factory of the world. And China became the factory of the world, and then you had all this transportation and supply chain being built up to the developed markets. So China supplied to the Pacific coast of the United States, China supplied to Europe, and China supplied to the rest of the world. And suddenly there's this global network being created, consumers, producers linked together by the supply chain. And while this was happening and China was growing, there's a new phenomenon that is coming up. The biggest challenge about doing a business is finding a customer. You need to find a customer. And for a customer, you need to have a distribution network. You can design a product, do everything, but you need to have a customer. And the biggest problem of finding customer is a knowledge asymmetry that exists between various customers because information is not easily available. And at the same time, customers have different time zones, different time schedules, so everything has to be synchronous. So you have to build vast distribution chain, you have to build warehouses, you have to build information systems, you've got to spend money, everything else. And suddenly in the last 20 years, there are this phenomena of the internet. And the internet was the next great revolution, which is going to change everything we do after the invention of the steam engine. And why is that? Because for the first time since human civilization started 10,000 years ago, you have a common platform for everybody in the world. It's an electronic platform available 24/7, available to everybody in the world, where you can put information, you can access information, and You can reach out to anybody, anywhere, in any language, to rich multimedia, to voice, to videos, or anything else. And everybody is part of this network impact, putting more and more information into this entire platform. And this platform is free. Platform is cheap. You just need a cell phone, a connection to this. Earlier there was a PC. That's another hindrance, friction to business, like Ganesh says. Now we got a cell phone, a smartphone. On a smartphone, you need a smartphone, a wireless connection, and 6 billion or 7 billion people have a smartphone or a phone. They don't have a smartphone, they have a phone. And very soon everybody is going to have a smartphone because smartphone costs have collapsed because the market is so huge. So everybody in this world, whether you are in Timbuktu or in Ramnathpuram or in Bhutan or in, Terra del Fuego. You know where's Terra del Fuego? Right now in the tip of South America, all right? It's a very wild area. Whether anywhere you are, you can be connected with the web and the smartphone to all the markets in the world, get the latest information, have the latest news, and anybody can reach you anywhere. Just imagine this, a truly globalized market. And the hindrance of distance, the hindrance of time, the hindrance of synchronicity, the hindrance of information, everything is removed. And you come on this common platform, which is only going to oscillate over a period of time. And this disruption of the internet, this disruption of technology, this reduction of cost because of cloud technology and advances in technology has created the true global marketplace. And that's going to disrupt the existing way of centralized production, supply chain, and a consumer. And hitting first the supply chain. Where the cost of the supply chain is very high. India, the cost of the supply chain is about 14%, 20 lakh crores. In the United States is 5%, and that's something like about $800 billion. And China is about 6%, $600 billion. So globally, if you add up everything, it could be $4.5 trillion. So the supply chain that connects consumers and everybody else is getting disrupted because a producer can reach a consumer directly. Let's say I'm an artisan, making silk saris in Varanasi, all right, because Modi is there, right? Varanasi. Now, I don't know my customer. So what do? There is a middleman who comes and gives me the silk. There's a middleman who gives me a little bit of money, and I do it on my own, in my own design, and then he comes and takes the whole thing and sells. He sells at 4 times what I get. So I'm an artisan. What do I lack? I lack finance. I lack knowledge. I lack markets. But largely, I lack markets. I don't know who my consumer is, how to buy. So I go on the web, and I have a portal, and people see me from all over, and then they place orders, they give me money, I buy raw material, I supply directly. Now, the price which is 2 times, 3 times, because I don't have access to the market, and the consumer suddenly collapses, the consumer gets a lower price, and I get a higher price. Because something in middle is aggregating data, is giving access and removing the friction that is created through the supply chain. So supply chain is getting disrupted, and that is huge, huge. So every small business can come up all over the world, in any part of the world, reach any consumer directly, remove this friction to business, manufacture something that you like, get it financed by somebody, and the virtual company has come into play. A virtual company which can aggregate things and get things done and reach consumers. And to top it all, there is a lot of capital coming into this place. So supply chain gets disrupted. The consumer choice gets disrupted because the consumer can exercise choice and buy from all over the world. At the same time, for the manufacturer, where we had the model of a highly centralized model with technology and everything else, is getting disrupted in a very big way. You must have heard of 3D printing. In 3D printing, you can sit and design and then get the whole good that you want printed. You can create an automobile. You can create an aeronautical engine. You can create a house in 3D printing, and you can create chocolates. You can create, internal human organs because somebody has tried it. You can create kneecap replacements. You can create something that can be put into your body. You can create drugs. You can create tablets. You can create anything because the 3D printing machine, layer by layer, whatever raw material goes to the machine prints and creates an exact image. So the bespoke manufacturing. When Gandhi spoke about the spinning wheel, the spinning wheel was essentially to empower an individual to do all this work so he becomes self-sufficient. So this kind of a disruption in manufacturing will lead to self-sustained communities which do not depend upon the global marketplace. Because in self-sustained communities, so long as you have the basic raw material which can be easily manufactured and done locally, you can go to a neighbor who will design everything for you, whatever you want, and then go to another shop where you press a button and the machine prints for you and gives it to you instantaneously. And this is all going to happen. It's happening already in many parts of the world in a very small way, at the very edge. And if this happens, what happens to all this huge supply chain? What happens to those big factories? What happens to those, assembly lines of people? What happens to all the labor coming? And everything is going to get disrupted. Let me give you another example of a very large industry, the oil industry. Oil and gas. Oil and gas is a $5 trillion industry. Now the price has fallen, so maybe it's $2.5 trillion globally. We consume 93 million barrels of oil every single day. Now, how do you get oil? And why is oil consumed? Because automobiles, for power, for petrochemicals, everything else we need is oil. Because the basic, raw material is inorganic, right? Inorganic carbon. So you dig in the desert. Saudi Arabia owns 20% of the world, the Middle East. Pump the oil out and put it to a pipeline. It goes to a port, to a ship. The ship brings it to a refinery somewhere, is refined, pumped again to a storage yard. From the storage yard, is distributed to a pump station, and the pump station we go fill our automobile and we run it, right? Suppose you have an electric car. What happens? The electric car, like Tesla, is run on batteries and run on maybe non-oil power. So you have a battery. The battery is very heavy. When you redesign the battery, or maybe have a fuel cell which generates only water and which requires hydrogen, what essentially do is you disrupt this entire $2.5 trillion industry. All right, just imagine that I got an electric car and I solve the battery problem, which could be solved if Ganesh and others entrepreneurs decide to fund some startups. Maybe one of you will do it. And then this automobile weight will come down because you don't have an internal combustion engine. And then you have a solar farm where through the solar, at maybe 40% efficiency, at 25% efficiency, power is generated, power is stored in a flow battery, and from a flow battery, it goes to your car. So you don't require oil. You don't require oil. What happens to this huge supply chain? What happens to this huge industry all over the place? What happens to the motive power that is being used all over? It all gets disrupted. And solar power today is almost infinite for our lifetime because it's going to last a long time. And that disruption is also happening. So the point I'm trying to make is the entire ecosystem that we know it is getting disrupted because of technology. And the biggest disruption that's going to happen in the world is we're not going to produce enough babies. You may all laugh. Just imagine you don't produce enough babies. Japan has last year 1 million babies being born and 1.25 million people died. It's a declining population. 25% of Japan is more than 65. Women live up to 88, men up to 81, and women live longer. There are maybe large number of people living beyond 100. So when you live longer, women don't want to have babies because they want to go work, they want to be independent, they don't want to be oppressed by men and family. Society dies. And that's the biggest disruption happening. The Japanese population of 127 million will come down to 97 million by 2050, and by 2100, they expect to come down to 67 million. And China, which has been running the world, has a problem because the Chinese workforce of 650 million has stagnated, is coming down. Now, why am I telling you all this? Because there's disruption happening on the world on a scale never happened before and is going to accelerate over a period of time. And you, are the beneficiaries, are part of this disruption that's happening. So there is a premium on innovation. There's a premium on everything happening. And on top of this, there's something called disruptive capital. Why does Ganesh get all those absurd valuations? Why do people pump in money into Ganesh's ventures and give him all that money, even though it may not make profits, it may not have cash, and it may not do anything? Why does it happen? And let me tell you why it happens. Because we have surplus capital in the world. And when the surplus capital coming out of surplus savings, capital gravitates towards the point which gives you the greatest value. And the greatest value today happens to be in innovation because a large part of capital is dumb capital. It's invested in assets which give you very little returns, and returns are coming down. Today, a 10-year Bundesbond in Germany, 10-year government bond in Germany gives you 0.7% a year. Per year, not per month, per day. 0.7%. For 10 years. 0.7%. Japan gives you 0.2%. Interest rates are down, so what do you do with the savings? So surplus capital. So there is disruptive capital coming, and the disruptive capital is very simple. Disruptive capital plays at the edge, at the margin of innovation, at the margin of disruption, and it invests in areas which are margin. Let me give you an example. Suppose you have an utility industry. A utility industry is an industry which generates power, distributes power, and which has transmits power, right? It has redundancy of 150%, blah, blah, blah. So in this industry, which is utilities, you get regulated returns, maybe 5-6% a year. So maybe $500 billion is invested in this industry. Now, there are smart people who say this industry is only going to grow at 2 or 3% because the economy is very mature. And now we must find different ways. So then comes an entrepreneur like you who says, I'm going to get power from solar. And because regulations have been put where costs have gone up beyond the roof, you have this company which gets $5-10 million and goes to somebody's house and says, hey, you know what? I'm going to put a panel on top of you, and you don't have to pay me anything, and the power is going to be generated, and that's going to put in the grid, and 60% of your power is going to be free. Voila. And then because regulations say in the peak time you can pump in power because you want green power. Governments want green power. There's too much of pollution, right? So they say, okay, if you pump in green power, and in the afternoon you can get 3 times the price or 2 times the price. So every house becomes a generating station. They don't have distribution. They don't have transmission. They become distribution. So this company comes, push 10,000, 10 million, push 20,000, gets 5 million, valuation goes up, goes to 50, 100, 200, 1 billion, 2 billion, capital flows in. And some smart cookie says, hey, you know what? This disruption is happening. Let me put the whole industry short. They short the whole market. Short the 500 billion. 2% capital moves, valuation goes up, 3% moves, valuation goes up. Suddenly this industry becomes 15 billion. Tesla is some 15, 20 billion. They only make 60,000 cars. General Motors makes about maybe 4-5 million cars, and I think the value is less of whatever it is. So why should Tesla get it? My friend in America shorted Tesla, he lost his shirt. So disruptive capital is coming, and that's what is funding Ganesh. Why? Because they believe there's going to be disruption. They believe there's going to be change. And because they come there, and there are people who are greedy, want exciting returns, they follow the herd, because you have to be the first. They go on making things till the next sucker comes and takes it, and then this industry becomes a big industry, and the disruption is over, they go somewhere else. So disruptive capital is finding out ways to disrupt. And this is what is going to happen. And in this environment, where capital is going to come in at points, everybody wants to disrupt each other, all of you are going to play. And you're going to build this wonderful enterprises that Ganesh spoke of, and you're going to scale. Now, after you build this wonderful enterprise, you have a market, what should you do? Well, the one thing you can do is sell it off and make your money and go home. The smart people always does that. And Ganesh is the master. He knows how to create value. He knows where the greatest return is. The biggest return is 0 to 100, right? From 100 to 200 is just 100%. 0 to 100 is, I don't know what percentage is, Ganesh, you can calculate. It's very big. So if you have to go from 0 to 100, sell it off. Somebody makes 100, 200, that's fine. He only doubles money. I got my money up 100 times, right? So you could sell it off, or you could say, I'm here for Snapchat, right? Snapchat, big deal. I got 3 billion, I want to go to 100 billion. Fine, it's okay. So if you want to do that, you got to build a sustainable business. And sustainable business means you got to do, unfortunately, certain small things. And those are, you must take care of a customer, because at the end of the day, you need a customer. Every company that has valuation needs somebody to try it out. B2C, we had a B2C, B2B, blah, blah, blah. So you need to have a customer, and customer delight is very essential, and customers are very fickle. They're very fickle, especially earlier customers for Google were maybe 20 years plus. Now Facebook has been 18, 24, and the Snapchat and all is 13 to 14, and most of them don't have money. They're not going to pay you anything. Morgan Stanley made a search and said the teens and the current generation coming up or in college don't want to pay money. They think everything in the world is free, including the pocket money they get from the parents. Everything is free. They're not going to pay any money when they grow up. So you need to create a customer delight and make sure they stick to you. And that means you got to respond to them, you got to understand. And if you don't respond to them, they're going to go on social media, they're going to blast you, they're going to talk ill of you, as you see on social media, and you're kaput. Ignore all the response, don't respond to them, don't treat them as if they're God, and you are in great trouble. Second, you got to create teams In the end of the day, business is built of teams. And if you think you're a superstar, like somebody in Bombay who created and said, I'm God himself, forget the investor, forget everybody else, I'm the last ultimate man, you're going to be in trouble. So you've got to create teams, and the teams need to be motivated. And for that, there has to be alignment of interest. And the alignment of interest is very clear. The company has a certain prospect and a growth path. Employees and people, not employees, people have certain aspirations. The aspiration of the company and the people should match together, and the fit should be very tight. And once this aspiration is fit, either because you got stock options, you see the valuation, or something like that, people work beautifully. The misapplication and aspiration creates a discordant voice, and that's why you need to have a good aspiration, a good team. And then, sadly, you got to plan for the future. A little bit of planning. When you scale up, you got to plan. You've got to think what is going to happen 6 months down the line, 7 months down the line, because the degree of difficulty at different stages of the curve is very different. When you're at 100, the degree of difficulty is X. When you go to 500, the difficulty is Y, and Y is not a linear equation. All right? And when you go to 10,000, the degree of difficulty is, something else. Just before I left, I met, Nandan and everybody and said, you know what? Every year we got to hire 60,000 people. 2 years later, if you have the same model, we got to hire 100,000 people. Get 60,000 jokers, train them up, put them everything, they leave you after 1 year, 40,000 people go away, everybody wants more salary. This model is broken because it's built on people. Teachers today needs 80,000, 90,000 people per year. It's very difficult. The companies have become like airport terminals. You get the people in, stay there and go out. And you've got to make sure that you put all the retail terminals, all the kiosks so they stay longer. That's the only thing, because they become like an airport terminal. Okay? And the flights coming in and flights going out. So, in this business, how do? You've got to change the model to something else. And then I left for various reasons, whatever reasons. But we say it's not my problem, okay? Somebody solve it yourself. And it's a very difficult problem to solve. People are finding out. So, you got to plan for the future and start building blocks right now for when the future comes. And you can't plan everything. Maybe 60%, 70%, you know what is happening. For example, if he's building Tutor Vista, he's got to say, if the demand for 10,000 teachers, what do I do? Where do I go? Portia, if I want a business to grow, I need 10,000 nurses. How do I manage this 10,000 nurses? 10,000 therapists, blah, blah, blah. Because it's got to be scale, right? Everything is going to be in scale. While technology, that Snapchat and all can be scaled, when you provide real services and real goods, it's got to be scaled. And in big basket, if you're going to build a supply chain, they're going to have the same problem like Hindustan Lever. Problem is going to be the same because you're delivering, except you're going through the web, you're disintermediating, doing something very different, and you get capital, but the problems are going to catch up. And then you got to respect capital. You have to respect capital. Never blow up your cash. Never blow up your cash. Ganesh knows that very well. He's a smart cookie. He's kept $100 million in his bank in a deposit. He knows anytime venture capital doesn't come, he's going to write a check, right, Ganesh? So he's kept all the money that is made somewhere else to be given to all these companies when they want money. And he sees his cash balance every single day. He's a smart cookie. Okay? See your cash. The reason is very clear. Cash is like blood in the body. If it keeps going out, you're going to die. And if you think that there are people waiting in the queue to give you money, you're very, let's say, amiss. Okay? You're mistaken because nobody's waiting to give money. You got to create the hype. You got to create that image. You got to go out and pounce on people, take the cash, bring it in, and keep it in the bank. It's very important to keep the cash, and very serious, because the cash goes out, you're kaput, because you're running models which are scaling up, which have a huge need for cash, either for capex or opex or for whatever it is, because the business is not as sustainable, is not generating revenues, is not generating surpluses, and that's why you have to respect cash. And respect cash, don't spend as if there's no tomorrow. Earlier in 2002, people, all they had to do is spend, get money, spend. The spend means kaput, all right? Because everybody is getting smarter. We got 3 players in e-commerce in this country. One of them is going to die. And that's not going to happen very late, maybe 1 or 2 years. Because there's no place for 3 players. One of them is going to die. We've got to see who's going to die, who's got the deeper pocket, because all of them are losing money. It's unsustainable as a model, and we're going to have deep challenges. So, cash is important. Respect capital, cut down your costs, and make sure, because you are disintermediating the business, disrupting the business, you're taking out a market efficiency. And the market efficiency could be 10%, 20%, 30%. Right now, you're at 40%. You've got to bring it down and operate only the market efficiency so that you don't lose cash beyond a point. Because as you grow bigger, you lose more and more cash. There's not going to be a pot of gold at the end of it to do. All great businesses have become sustainable. Facebook becomes sustainable. Google becomes sustainable. Twitter, It's got a challenge because it's not sustainable, right? And then, Jack Ma is sustainable. Everybody's got high valuation, even though they got, high values, it's sustainable. Uber is just putting in cash. They're doing it. In San Francisco, they're sustainable. In the United States, they become sustainable. They're becoming cash positive. In other countries, they're getting markets. So they got a very nice strategy of doing it. Airbnb is cash sustainable. So they're all building market cap, market value. So you got to be sustainable from the point of view. And then, lastly, get better people. Get good people. One good person is worth 10 duds. Don't go hire some all kind of people just because there's a glamour. And I like all of you doing this very funny thing saying, we need, when you're still small in a startup, we need work-life balance. Never get anybody who talks about work-life balance. Just tell the guy, your work is your life. And it's very balanced if you work 24 hours. It's fantastic. Okay? Be very clear. There is no work-life balance. For achievers, Ganesh has no work-life balance. He loves his work. He's in love with it. Every day he counts the money he's going to make, the valuation he's going to make. He's in love with it. The excitement drives him. He can't even sleep. And he says, now I don't have enough life. I'm getting old. I got to solve the world's problem. Look at him. He's a great example. So work-life balance, there's no work-life balance. Giving them leave, giving them cars, giving them, they're not worth it. Get guys who are immersed, who are going to slog. They have a dream to change the world. And they've got interests are aligned. They want to be billionaires. And it's going to take them some time and they're going to work. Okay? And never become an employee. You got it? Understood? You're all founders, CEOs. Don't become an employee. Don't go and dilate until your stake comes to 2% and say, hey, Baba, what am I working for? And then you have this evil capitalist coming and saying, hey, man, you go for this growth, do this. Suddenly you wonder, do this. I'm the CEO, man. You're the CEO. Hey, buddy, what is your stake? Serious. That's the biggest problem that happens. Who blow up cash, who don't respect capital, who are not in control. Ganesh is in control. Nobody can dislodge him. Anybody comes, gives his money, shuts up and goes. He gets a monthly report. After that, don't open a mouth. You want strategy? I'll listen to you, but I'll do exactly what I want because I decide I'm the guy who runs it. Brutal. Remember, when capitalists come and give money, they're putting money on you. If all those guys who give money knew better than you to run the business, they'll be running the business. Why are they running the fund for 220? They're middlemen because they can't run a business. They're not entrepreneurs. You are the entrepreneur, so you got to run the business, right? They're bidding on you. And once you become employed, they keep telling you, ye karo, wo karo, ye karo. Tell them, arey bhaiya, idhar aa jao, hum jayega, aap dhanda shuru karo. So be careful. It's a very important thing. So plan your finances so that you don't become an employee. You are the entrepreneur. You run the business. You are the CEO. I won't say Malik. Malik is a very feudal term, but you decide. But have an open, transparent, collegial culture. Create a culture which is open, transparent. Feedback comes. Everybody feels wanted. The best idea wins. Everything should be on merit. And be paranoid. Andy Grove said that. Be paranoid, right? Be paranoid, really. The best people worry about their business every single day. You go for dinner with Ganesh, he's always thinking about his business. He's always thinking what can go wrong, what can be done, what to do tomorrow. His mind is alive. He's constant in the food, but his mind is alive. He can't even sleep. And you put a signal, you can draw the signal from his brain to say what he's thinking. I think the next product that has to come, Ganesh, we need a dashboard, linked to your brain. So all your brain, all your thoughts come out and we know what is happening. So I think it's very important. Be paranoid. Think about a business all the time. So I just want to give you this overall view of the disruptions happening, the change that's happening, and the next 20 years are going to be very different. And India is the best place, like Ganesh said, because the IT service industry solved the world's problem. We solved JP Morgan's problem, Bank of America's problem, GE's problem, but you are going to solve India's problems. And India is growing. We're 2.23 trillion. By 2035, we'll be a $10 trillion economy. We're going to grow 3-4 times. We're going to be big. And startups, Prem, are a big phenomenon. Let me give you some data. India has 18,000 startups, $75 billion embedded value, 300,000 people are employed. Every year we have 3,500 to 4,000 startups, getting $8 to $12 billion. Seed capital is $500 million this year. And, Bangalore has 1,200, 1,500 with about 7,000 startups in Bangalore alone. All right? And in 10 years' time, we're going to have a minimum of 100,000 startups and create $500 billion of value in India. 10 years? I'll give you the data. 2.23 trillion. Market cap on the stock exchange is 1.6 trillion. 10 years later, we could be 5 trillion, growing at 7.58%. And we'll have a market value maybe of $4 trillion. And 500 billion is, 12%, 13%, peanuts. So 500 billion could happen, $1 trillion could happen, and we'll have in the next 10 years, 3 million people employed in this. So more competition, more companies, more innovation, more capital coming in. Disrupt, disrupt, disrupt. And have fun. Thank you very much.